The Little Mermaid, Part 2. The little group of mermaids gathered together and gazed at the beautiful palace. It was built of shining stone, with long flights of marble steps, one of which reached quite down to the sea. Through the clear crystal of the lofty windows could be seen noble rooms with costly silk curtains and hangings of tapestry, while the walls were covered with beautiful paintings which were a pleasure to look at. The princess would swim much nearer the shore than any of the others ventured to. Indeed, once she went quite up the narrow channel under the marble balcony, which threw a broad shadow on the water. Here she would sit and watch the young prince, who thought himself quite alone in the bright moonlight. She saw him many times of an evening sailing in a pleasant boat, with music playing and flags waving. She peeped out from under the green rushes, and if the wind caught her long silvery white veil, those who saw it believed it to be a swan spreading out its wings. On many a night, too, when the fishermen, with their torches, were out at sea, she heard them relate so many good things about the doings of the young prince that she was glad she had saved his life when he had been tossed about half dead on the waves. And she remembered that his head had rested on her chest, but he knew nothing of it all, and could not even dream of her. She grew more and more fond of human beings, and wished more and more to be able to wander about with those whose worlds seemed to be so much larger than her own. They could fly over the sea in ships, and mount the high walls which were far above the clouds and the lands they possessed. Their woods and their fields stretched far beyond the reach of her sight. There was so much that she wished to know, and her sisters were unable to answer all her questions. Then she went to her old grandmother, who knew all about the upper world, which she very rightly called the lands above the sea.
If human beings are not drowned, can they live forever? Do they never die, as we do here in the sea?
Asked the little mermaid.
Yes,
Replied the old lady.
they must also die, and their term of life is even shorter than ours. We sometimes live to 300 years, but when we cease to exist, here we only become the foam of the surface of the water, and we have not even a grave down here of those we love. We have not immortal souls. We shall never live again, but, like the green seaweed, when once it has been cut off, we can never flourish more. Human beings, on the contrary, have a soul which lives forever, lives after the body has been turned to dust. It rises up through the clear, pure air beyond the glittering stars, as we rise out of the water, and behold all the land of the earth. So do they rise to unknown and glorious regions, which we shall never see.
Why have not we an immortal soul? I would give gladly all the hundreds of years that I have to live to be a human being, only for one day, and to have the hope of knowing the happiness of that glorious world above the stars.
You must not think of that. We feel ourselves to be much happier and much better off than human beings.
So I shall die, and as the foam of the sea, I shall be driven about never again to hear the music of the waves, or to see the pretty flowers, nor the red sun. Is there anything I can do to win an immortal soul?
No, unless a man were to love you so much that you were more to him than his father or mother, and if all his thoughts and all his love were fixed upon you, and the priest placed his right hand in yours, and he promised to be true to you here and after, then his soul would glide into your body, and you would obtain a share in the future happiness of mankind. He would give a soul to you and retain his own as well, but this can never happen. Your fish's tail which amongst us is considered so beautiful, is thought on earth to be quite ugly. They do not know any better, and they think it necessary to have 2 stout props, which they call legs, in order to be handsome."
Then the little mermaid sighed and looked sorrowfully at her fish's tail.
"Let us be happy, and dart and spring about during the 300 years that we have to live, which is really quite long enough. After that we can rest ourselves all the better. This evening we are going to have a court ball."
It is one of those splendid sights which we can never see on earth. The walls and the ceiling of the large ballroom were of thick but transparent crystal. Many hundreds of colossal shells, some of a deep red, others of grass green, stood on each side in rows, with blue fire in them, which lighted up the whole saloon and shone through the walls so that the whole sea was illuminated. Innumerable fishes, great and small, swam past the crystal walls. On some of them the scales glowed with a purple brilliancy, and on others they shone like silver and gold. Through the walls flowed a broad stream, and it danced the mermen and mermaids to the music of their own sweet singing. No one on earth has such a lovely voice as theirs. The little mermaid sang more sweetly than them all. The whole court applauded her with hands and tails, and for a moment her heart felt quite happy, for she knew she had the loveliest voice of all on earth or in the sea. But she soon thought again of the world above her, for she could not forget the charming prince, nor her sorrow that she had not an immortal soul like his. Therefore she crept away silently out of her father's palace, and while everything within was gladness and song, she sat in her own little garden, sorrowful and alone. Then she heard the bugle sounding through the water, and thought,
"He is certainly sailing above. He on whom my wishes depend, and in whose hands I should like to place the happiness of my life. I will venture all for him, and to win an immortal soul. While my sisters are dancing in my father's palace, I will go to the sea witch, of whom I've always been so much afraid, but she can give me counsel and help."
And then the little mermaid went out to where the sorceress lived. She had never been that way before. Neither flowers nor grass grew there. Nothing but bare, grey, sandy ground stretched out to the whirlpool, where the water, like foaming mill-wheels, whirled round everything that it seized, and cast it into the fathomless deep. Through the midst of these crushing whirlpools, the little mermaid was obliged to pass to reach the dominions of the sea witch, and also, for a long distance, the only road lay right across a quantity of warm, bubbling mire, called by the witch her turf moor. Beyond this stood her house. The little mermaid was so alarmed at what she saw that she stood still, and her heart beat with fear, and she was very nearly turning back. But she thought of the prince and of the human soul for which she longed, and her courage returned. She fastened her long flowing hair round her head, so that the seaweed might not seize hold of it. She laid her hands together across her chest, and then she darted forward as a fish shoots through the water, between the supple arms and fingers of the ugly seaweed, which was stretched out on each side of her. She saw that each held in its grasp something it had seized with its numerous little arms, as if they were iron bands. She now came to a house built with the bones of shipwrecks. There sat the sea witch, allowing a toad to eat from her hand. She called the ugly water snakes her little chickens, and allowed them to crawl all over her chest.
"I know what you want,"
said the sea witch.
"It is a very stupid thing for you to want, but you shall have your way, and it will bring you to sorrow, my pretty princess. You want to get rid of your fish's tail, and to have 2 supports instead of it, like human beings on earth. so that the young prince may fall in love with you, and that you may have an immortal soul."
And then the witch laughed so loud and disgustingly that the toad and the snakes fell to the ground and lay there wriggling about.
"You are but just in time, for after sunrise tomorrow I should not be able to help you till the end of another year. I will prepare something for you with which you must swim to land tomorrow before sunrise and sit down on the shore and drink it. Your tail will then disappear and shrink up into what mankind calls legs, and you will feel great pain, as if a sword were passing through you. But all who see you will say that you are the prettiest little human being they ever saw. You will still have the same floating gracefulness of movement, and no dancer will ever tread so lightly. But at every step you take, it will feel as if you are treading upon sharp knives. If you will bear all of this, I will help you."
Yes, I will,
said the little princess in a trembling voice as she thought of the prince and the immortal soul.
"But think again,"
said the witch.
"for when once upon your shape has become like a human being, you can no more be a mermaid. You will never return through the water to your sisters or to your father's palace again, and if you do not win the love of the prince, so that he is willing to forget his father and mother for your sake, and to love you with his whole soul, and allow the priest to join your hands that you may be man and wife, then you will never have an immortal soul. The first morning after he marries another, your heart will break, and you will become foam on the crest of the waves."
I will do it,
said the little mermaid, and she became pale as death.
"But I must be paid also. And it is not a trifle that I ask. You have the sweetest voice of all who dwell here in the depths of the sea, and you believe that you will be able to charm the prince with it also. But this voice you must give to me. The best thing you possess will I have for the price of my tonic. My own blood must be mixed with it, you see, that it may be as sharp as a two-edged sword."
But if you take away my voice, what is left for me?
said the little mermaid.
"Oh, but my dear, your graceful walk, your beautiful form, your expressive eyes, your long hair, surely with these you can enchant a man's heart. Well, have you lost your courage? Put out your hand, and let us agree on this payment. Then you shall have what you need."
Without a second thought, the little mermaid said,
I agree. And so it shall be.
End of part 2.